Gelecek korkudan göremiyorum. Çalışıyordu. Şimdi benim çok yakın arkadaşım var. O zaman en iyi arkadaşım. O yüzden benim de yakın
Welcome to SDSN Youth Conference. I would like to invite Professor Jeffrey Sachs and our Turkish youth representatives to the floor, please. So, dear Professor Jeffrey Sachs, distinguished guests, and our dear students, it's really a great pleasure for me today to welcome you all in the historical premises of Boğaziçi University for the SDSN Youth Conference. The progress in Turkey towards a more sustainable future in this time of a fast-growing economy is possible with close contact and collaboration with young generations, which means that special attention should be given to the education sector. Therefore, we believe that youth power, young researchers, and young entrepreneurs are critical for the success of future research in sustainability. We also believe that the proper holistic approach of sustainability research at the education sector needs to focus on awareness activities by education and training, integration of sustainable lifestyles for our daily activities, public perception, both environmentally and media-friendly projects. Considering the university campus life as one of the most effective communities to deliver sustainable lifestyle concept, for many years we are trying to develop our sustainable campus program. And we have started a new course on sustainable development for different students from different departments, given by different lecturers from different departments, that has been carried out under the control of Institute of Environmental Sciences. Boğaziçi University is the first university in Turkey that has integrated Green Campus concept into its latest two strategic plans. Because we have already defined our both managerial and technical roadmap, we are closely contact with students to achieve their high level of contribution. And now we have started to generate a platform, nationwide platform, with other Turkish universities. The attendance of students for previous events on this topic was growing each year, and this will help to increase the awareness for sustainability applications at education sector. Today, Boğaziçi University is hosting a very important youth conference, which can be named as Launching of SDSN Youth Turkey, with the presence of Professor Jeffrey Sachs. I believe that with his support to youth, we will be expanding our network not only on the national basis, but also on the regional basis, with the concept of bridging for a more sustainable future and uniting societies and continents. Actually, our youth has already internalized the bridging concept with harmony. The young generation will form a platform with high impact and efficiency with a true understanding of collaboration by all means. As a trendsetter in Boğaziçi University, we are facing many challenges in sustainability applications. So UN-SDSN support is essential to accelerate the awareness for sustainability in young population of Turkey. The launch event of UN-SDSN Youth is a perfect example for the collaboration of young people to create a common understanding for sustainability research and awareness. I have observed that the UN-SDSN Youth Turkey Conference preparations were fun, educative, and exciting. So today, we are having a new start altogether. I hope you could benefit from the conference and enjoy your stay at the university, please. Thank you so much for your help. So, before inviting Professor Jeffrey Sachs to the floor, may I give some short information about your background? Very short. I tried to shorten it, but I will put my glasses in order not to make it shorter. But I shortened it. You can be sure of it. So, Professor Jeffrey Sachs is a world-renowned professor of economics, leader in sustainable development, senior UN advisor, bestseller author, and a syndicated columnist whose monthly newspaper columns appear in more than 80 countries. He has twice been named among Time magazine's 100 most influential world readers. He was called by the New York Times probably the most important economist in the world, and by the Time magazine, the world's best-known economist. A recent survey by The Economist ranked Professor Sachs as among the world's 3 most influential living economists of the past decade. He serves as the director of the Earth Institute at Columbia University, as well as correlated professor of sustainable development and health policy and management. He is special advisor to United Nations Secretary General Ban Ki-moon on the Millennium Development Goals, having held the same position under former UN Secretary General Kofi Annan. He has authored several books, including 3 New York Times bestsellers. I would like to give the names of these books: The End of Poverty, Commonwealth Economics for a Crowded Planet, The Price of Civilization, and To Move the World. So, we are very much honored with the presence of Professor Sachs, and I would like to leave the floor to him. Thank you so much.
I think we'll just speak from here so we can have a nice discussion. So thanks everybody for coming together, and I don't want to give a long talk. I think we're going to just have a discussion together. It's great that Turkey is hosting the G20 this weekend. So all the world leaders are going to be coming here for a very important discussion in just a few days. And it's a discussion that obviously is a really important time for the world, because we've just adopted those 17 goals that you see on the chart, these Sustainable Development Goals. And I always assume that all of you already know all of them, right? We could have a quick quiz, and you know what SDG 4 is, SDG 11, SDG 14. I'm sure that you do, but if you don't, it's good practice, because you should be the first ones in your family to know what they are. And then you can quiz your parents, your friends, your teachers, to make sure that everybody knows what the goals are. So this is the first meeting of the G20 since those goals were adopted. They were adopted on September 25th at the United Nations. And that was after 3 years of negotiations inside the UN involving all of the countries in the world and a lot of discussions about what should be our goals for the next 15-year period. So I think it's important that the world agreed on these goals, and they're good ones. And the basic idea that they have is to combine a better economy with a fairer society. That means more equality, more opportunity for everybody, with environmental sustainability. So the idea is to put this combination together. It's not so easy. So we have to solve a lot of problems to be able to do this. And you're going to be critical for that. That's not just a slogan. Really, you're going to be in business, you're going to be in government, you're going to be teaching, you're going to be doing research on how we can figure out how to do this complicated job of making the economy work for everybody so that people have the kind of living standards and incomes that they need and want for their families, but also we don't ruin the planet at the same time because we're creating so much pollution or climate change or other damage. So that's the first context for the G20 meeting this weekend. The second context is that there's another negotiation that's also very important in Paris starting on November 30 and going on through December 10, and that's the climate negotiations. The basic story of climate change is now finally understood. And the basic story is that we have to shift from our energy use that's based on coal, oil, and gas to energy that's based on low carbon sources, wind, solar power, maybe nuclear energy, hydropower, geothermal energy, but a different mix. Now, Turkey's not on that course exactly yet. In fact, Turkey's on a course of even building up its coal sector. And if there's one message about climate change for the world, it's get out of coal, because coal is creating a lot of carbon dioxide emissions, which is the main problem with the climate change. So this is the second area that our governments are going to be discussing this weekend. The third is the subject they spend most of their time on, frankly, and that's war and peace. So they'll be spending a lot of time talking about Syria, a lot of time talking about the refugee crisis. At one level, the global goals are also about that. If you look at actually Sustainable Development Goal 16, it's very important. It says that we need peaceful societies. We need more peaceful societies than we have right now, because in Turkey, you're not only in a violent neighborhood, but there's violence inside the country. In the United States, where I'm living, we have a tremendous amount of violence, a lot of handgun violence, a lot of murders, a lot of still very terrible racial problems in the United States, which has been with us ever since the period of slavery, which was a major formative part of the U.S. history. So this is another issue that the leaders are going to talk about. To my mind, there's no way to manage war. We have to find a way to make peace. And I wish that there was a more deliberative strategy of how to make peace in Syria, and maybe the fact that you'll have hosted in Turkey all of the 5 members of the UN Security Council, China, Russia, the United States, the United Kingdom, and France, all here, is important, because I don't think that there's a way actually to make peace in Syria except if the United Nations Security Council takes a major responsibility. Otherwise, there's too much competition for power oh, the United States says Russia shouldn't do this, Russia says the US shouldn't do this. Turkey and Saudi Arabia say to Iran, stay out. Iran says, you stay out. And so this becomes a kind of war of proxies that is everybody's fighting each other in Syria. The only complete losers are the Syrians, of course. Their countries being destroyed as all of these political conflicts are being played out. But I'll tell you, there's another link between sustainable development and the conflict in Syria, which is less obvious, but also real. And that is that even if it weren't for the war, Syria was facing very serious human difficulties over the last 15 years. Even aside from the politics and the war, Syria was experiencing a massive drought during the last 15 years. It really continues, but a very extreme drought. Very little rainfall, very high temperatures, big failures of the farmers' crops. With the drought during the period 2006 to 2010, one of the most intense droughts in the modern history of the country. And so there was hunger, there was the food supply crisis. Even before the war started in 2011, there was a lot of instability and populations were moving inside the country because where people were living was no longer viable to grow crops. And so the estimate is that many, many hundreds of thousands of people in Syria were already in migration before the war. And then that created a lot of turmoil. The government is a pretty miserable government, so it was not responding to the people's needs. Protests started. The government cracked down violently on the protesters. Then, unfortunately, in my view, all of the neighbors, this country, Saudi Arabia, others, started shipping in weapons to pick sides. The United States also, and soon enough, there was a complete war underway. But I think it's really important to understand that even before there was war, there was an environmental crisis. And often we're seeing in the world now that the environmental crises are somehow playing into the unrest. And usually in our minds and in our headlines and in our politics, the war issues are carried by the generals, and the quote, soft issues like the environment, those are in a different ministry, and the environment minister is usually not very powerful, and the military is very powerful, and the end result is governments really don't even understand very well that a lot of the instability is coming from environmental crises because they don't react to them beforehand, and then when a war starts, then nobody asks the environment minister about the war, believe me. They don't even think that it has anything to do with it. And the generals just do what they do, which is not sustainable development, frankly. But this is a big problem. So my view is that if we were to think more seriously about all of the trouble spots in the world, and you're in a region of a lot of trouble spots, so it's really important to think about this clearly. We would understand that this isn't just politics. This is also sustainable development. And my opinion is that if we focus more on sustainable development, we'd also have fewer wars in the end. And the other opinion that I have is that if we continue with the wars, we're never going to have the attention span for sustainable development, because it's very hard to think about issues like the water supply or energy transformation or saving ecosystems when the bombs are going off. And you know, to agree on things like climate change, take that issue. In climate change, we all have to agree that we're going to use a different kind of energy system. And all the governments have to say, you know, the easy thing for me to do would be to burn coal. But we're going to do something harder. We're going to deploy solar power or something else. Why don't governments do that? Well, partly because they think very short term, but partly they say, if we take the hard road, but our adversaries or our enemies take the easy road, we get into trouble. So if the level of trust in the world is very low, then the United States is going to say, we're going to use our fossil fuels because we have them and it keeps us strong. China's going to say, well, we're going to use our coal because that's what we have. We're not going to do something that's going to put us at risk because the U.S. isn't doing it. And so if there isn't a high level of trust, there will not be solutions also. And that's what I really hate about war also, because by definition, war is the absence of trust. And so not only does war kill people, not only does it use huge resources, but it keeps our minds away from working together to solve these big problems. Well, all of this is to say that a meeting like the G20 is very important. And I hope that this weekend will be fruitful in three big ways. That's my hope. One is that the governments will say, oh, hey, do you remember we signed those goals? What are we going to do about them? And start to take this seriously. Number two, they'll say, oh yeah, are you going to Paris? Yeah, I'm going to Paris. Oh yeah, we got climate negotiations in 2 weeks. What are you going to do? Oh, you're going to do that much? Well, we're going to do that much too. And we get a positive dynamic. And the third is that they sit down and say, you know, it's not just the refugee crisis. Turkey has 2 million, more than 2 million Syrian refugees. And Europe is receiving 1 million or more, much bigger population. They should be able to absorb it. Look at what Turkey's absorbing. But instead of just handling the crisis by saying who absorbs the refugees, that's a tragedy. That's 10 million Syrian people out of their homes. 10 million. We should be saying we need a real solution to this, peaceful solution. So that's what I hope comes out of Turkey this weekend in Antalya. And for us, we have to do what we can always to let our governments know, first, that they have a responsibility because they're not there for their own convenience. They're there for us, all of our governments. They're to represent the population. They're to meet the human needs. And second, I believe that it's very important for us to help our governments solve these problems because these problems are not simple. Now, also, politicians like to know what people care about because they do want to win elections. They do want to be responsive. So that's why also for youth, it's very important that you be heard. Either you're new voters or you're going to be voters soon. And so if the government hears, oh, my God, they really care about this thing, this environmental thing, it'll make a difference. It actually will make a big difference. And they will be surprised, and you'll be surprised at what a difference it can make. So that's why organization is quite important also, and why at the UN project that I am happy to direct, the Sustainable Development Solutions Network, that's the auspices that we're meeting in today because this is the SDSN Turkey chapter of this world network. If we have youth that are well organized and making their voices heard on Twitter and Facebook and in the universities and on the campuses, it makes a big difference, believe me. What else should you do? If you're interested in this field and you ask me, what should I study? My answer is anything you're interested in is relevant for this. If you want to be an engineer, if you want to be a politician, if you want to be a lawyer, a doctor, a public health specialist, a information technology engineer, computer programmer, app writer, Bill Gates, whatever you want to be, it's relevant for this. What you need to do, though, is to remember whatever you're doing to fit in to this bigger picture. So it's not so important exactly what you study, though, of course, I hope everybody takes a class in sustainable development. But aside from that, for what you want to really become an expert in, go with what you're interested in and learn a lot about it. Environmental engineering, energy systems, politics, economics, finance, public health. It's all good. All of it's needed. What's needed is people who care, who understand the issues, who have memorized the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, who understand why they're important for the world, and then you become a specialist in one area and say, I'm not sure I know exactly about waste management problems in the city, but I do know a lot about public health, or I do know a lot about education. And I want to work on SDG 4 on quality education, or I want to work on SDG 3 on healthcare, or I want to work on SDG 6 on water, or I want to work on SDG 7 on renewable energy. Any of those is good. But the key is to keep caring and having in mind the big picture and that you want to contribute. So thanks very much for having me here.
We are so much delighted with you. You really gave the energy to all of us for this SDSN journey. And we need the proactive approach of our students. So I think they are encouraged now. Now, if you have questions, maybe after the other presentations, we can have all the questions. Now let's move to Sheila, the youth representative from Turkey, SDSN youth representative. She will summarize what they are doing. So thank you, Sheila.
Maybe I'll sit there so we can.
Yeah.
It's with great pleasure that I welcome you on this special session of the Sustainable Development Goals in G20 countries conference. It's a great honor for me to be with Professor Sachs and Professor Angelos in this session. We will focus on promoting the role of youth in addressing the challenges of sustainable development. I am Sheila Temizler, SDSN youth representative for Turkey. At the same time, I'm a graduate student in Boğaziçi University Institute of Environmental Sciences and a researcher on Boğaziçi University Sustainable Development and Cleaner Production Center. As we always repeat the sentence, education a global movement of young people about sustainable development and supporting them in the creation of innovative and sustainable solutions to global development challenges is the mission of SDSN Youth. I'm so sorry. Firstly, I want to share the formation process of SDSN youth. You can see our global SDSN youth team. These are official ones. SDSN youth started on the initiative of UN SDSN Australia Pacific in May 2014. The main goal of this initiative, which is led by Australia, is to increase youth contributions to the SDGs, gathering the role of the youth of the world under the roof of the SDSN. Preparations of SDSN youth officially began in October 2014 with the support of Professor Sachs. The board, in which representatives from all over networks are also participants, formed the foundation of the SDSN Youth Initiative. In the light of these developments, SDSN Youth was officially found under the UN SDSN in April 2015 and officially launched in June 2015 in Paris. SDSN Youth Turkey joined this network under the supervision of Professor Nilgün Cılız, who is a lecturer in Boğaziçi University Institute of Environmental Sciences, director of the Boğaziçi University Sustainable Development and Cleaner Production Center, co-chair of UNSDSN Turkey, and coordinator of the Boğaziçi University Sustainable and Green Campus program. We have 4 global targets that we work on. Now I want to explain very briefly these ones, and then my colleague Cahit will explain more deeply what we do to reach our targets. As you can see, education, policy, collaboration, and youth solutions are our mentioned 4 targets. For education, we have a blog on our website, and we post some blogs there. We host a knowledge platform featuring with articles or summary of some reports, supported by infographics and powerful images. For policy, we arrange policy dialogues by using SDSN national, regional, and global events and conferences as an opportunity to involve youth in the policy making. For collaboration, we issue membership to university student unions, clubs, societies, and some organizations whose aims and objectives comply with SDSN and also SDSN Youth's mission. For youth solutions, the creation of a global network of university clubs and societies enables SDSN Youth to coordinate some events and activities within different campuses and cities more effectively. After giving very brief information, I want to mention our global Know Your Goals campaign and its case statistics. As we all know, in September, world leaders come together in New York City and adopted the Sustainable Development Goals. In this campaign initiative, volunteer individuals or organizations were asked to host an event to explore important questions related to SDGs. What are they, why are they important, and what do they mean for their communities? Also related with this Know Your Goals campaign, we organized a global video campaign to spread the SDGs idea. All individuals were asked to record 1 or 2 minutes videos and share on YouTube about their favorite SDGs. Then we combined all of these videos and created a global movement. I want to show the video for you. Let's watch it.
Why is it so important for the world to have sustainable development goals?
I think sustainable development goals are very important because they are showing us a path.
Never before have we decided to implement something on such a grand scale.
The diversity report captures every single need that should be addressed.
සහ ලෝකයේ සිටින සෑම මිනිසෙකුටම එක සමානව සම්පත් බෙදීම අවශ්‍යයි.
I believe it is very important to have these issues because they allow for tangible, specific goals that can help measure achievements.
Building institutions at a local, national, and global level
In order to improve people's lives worldwide and hopefully keep it that way.
Right now, time is of the essence.
to remember that we have only one planet. That's what the SDGs are about. They link all the challenges we are facing and they show how interdependent they are.
İnanıyorum ki birlik olursak bütün sorunların üstesinden geleceğiz.
هي ما كلام على ورق بس الأهداف دي موجودة عشان أنت تعرف أهدافك عشان تهتم بالتنمية وعشان تركز على إنها تكون مستدامة ليه ولغيرك وللأجيال.
It is really a good starting point for us to take action. I know we have to work quite a bit more.
The race is on to make sure that everyone knows what they are, why they're important, and what they can do to support them.
The reason why it's so important is that the 17 SDGs together offer a unique opportunity this year to embark on a development path that will lead us to a sustainable future.
We can end extreme poverty. We can assure healthcare for all. We can stop this terrible risk of climate change. You can't think of a more exciting agenda. The Sustainable Development Goals. These are your goals, your future, your livelihoods.
Know your goals.
Know your goals.
Know your goals!
And now it's time for key statistics for Know Your Goals campaign. Total number of events is 116 and more than 100 organizations involved in this campaign. Events are organized in 40 countries and the striking number is the total number of attendees, which is around, which is between 15,000 and 20,000. Kenya organized 23 events and it gets the first place. Then with 9 events, Nigeria, 8 events, Australia, 7 events in the United States of America, 5 events, Turkey, and 4 events organized in India and Cameroon. Let's look at some pictures from all over the world. As you can see, there is an active participation of these events. For Turkey, we organized 5 events. 3 of them were in Boğaziçi University, 1 of them was in Unilever head office, and 1 will be tomorrow in Climate Forum. If you are interested, you can join us. If you want to look for other pictures from all the campaigns, you can visit our Facebook page also. Now, if there are no questions, I can leave the floor to Cahit Bekteoma from Boğaziçi University, who is the project leader for education in SDSN Youth. He will be presenting the aims and objectives of SDSN Youth. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheila, for the introduction. We as SDSN Youth are aware of the energy and capabilities of youth, and we seek to capitalize on those aspects to spread awareness of the SDGs globally. In that objective, we've identified 5 aims and objectives that will guide us in the years to come in achieving that. Our first objective is to educate young people about the Sustainable Development Goals and encourage them to prioritize their implementation. The main aim in this objective is to generate public support for the SDGs, and we're hoping that this public support will translate into political pressure on decision makers to help prioritize the SDGs. We also seek to educate the young about the challenges of sustainable development, and we're launching initiatives, education initiatives such as SDSN Edu and others to use them as platforms to spread awareness among the young people. Our second objective, which I completely forgot to use the presentation, excuse me. Well, the second objective is to integrate concerns and views of young people into pathways for achieving sustainable development goals. We are hoping to ensure that young people's concerns are heard by policymakers and experts, and that their concerns and ideas are taken into consideration in the decision-making process. Our third objective for SDSN Youth is to provide a platform for young people, for different communities, from different communities, to connect, share ideas and experiences that address the challenges of sustainable development. We strive to establish a global platform for the effective communication and sharing of information, for the effective coordination of activities and projects for achieving the SDGs. We seek to connect the youth of different regions and communities all around the world to each other, to connect them to each other through this platform to ensure diversity of ideas, perspectives that help tackle the challenges of the SDGs. Our fourth and last objective is to initiate and support projects that are aimed towards achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. We seek to initiate projects and ventures that are able to achieve help or achieve, at least assist in achieving one or more number of the SDGs. We are looking forward to identifying promising projects and initiatives by young individuals or groups globally to help scale and or fund them with assistance from SDSN networks all around the world. We seek to support new and existing projects by our members that are working towards achieving the SDGs. And of course, all of these sub-aims of the fourth objective corresponding to achieving youth engagement in global matters concerning sustainability. So in that light, with these objectives, then what is to separate us from the other initiatives that are similar objectives to us? We've identified five such differences. First is our knowledge base. The SDSN Youth will back its projects with knowledge and activities with existing research and expertise issued by the SDSN thematic groups. We have great support in terms of expertise and knowledge from the SDSN networks globally. This will help ensure that the SDSN Youth can rely on expertise and existing research to identify best methods for achieving the SDGs globally. Our second difference is accountability. The leadership of SDSN for SDSN Youth will provide, will ensure that the youth projects uphold the values of the network in general, so that we have someone to answer to. Our third is our access to global networks. By virtue of being a part of the extensive organizations backed by groups and individuals from all over the planet, we will have the ability to draw on these relationships to expand into regions that other young organizations might find difficult to. This will give us diversity of perspective and ensure that global projects and campaigns are facilitated across borders more effectively. We also seek multifaceted approaches which we believe that is the difference that SDSN Youth can make. Most youth organizations generally focus on one approach or one area of sustainable development, which will work with a number of different sectors as we seek to. Additionally, it gives SDSN Youth the ability to engage not just the NGOs or the development sector, but also the private sector. This issue was touched upon yesterday by many of the speakers, especially from the private sector. Our last difference that we believe we can make is credibility. The SDSN brand is a huge brand. It's getting even more recognition by the day. It brings great value to the youth network. It provides us great opportunities for engaging and cooperating with other UN family of organizations, agencies, and networks. This will strengthen SDSN Youth's credibility by seeking to lead campaigns and projects around the world. Additionally, the credibility of SDSN will help attract more individuals to seek membership and to take part in SDSN youth activities. Thank you.
questions?
As you know, youth unemployment ratio is about 30% in Middle East and North Africa. If we link this unemployment to radicalization, that we can link easily, we can find out that this case has a global effect, as we can see in refugee crisis. My question is how we can generate jobs in Middle East and North Africa in order to achieve 8 development goal.
Maybe we'll take a few questions.
Let's have the other questions.
Good one.
Is it possible to stop climate change, or are we just trying to postpone it or like soften its effects?
As you know, after the Gezi Park events, there was a huge awareness in the environmental subject also, and it also created more active youth in Turkey. But in that aspect, this activeness created a bit violent response from the government's side. How do you think the youth will go into these awareness and action projects in a more less violent terms?
My question is to Professor Sachs. Would you agree that goal number 4, the quality education, is also associated with the crisis in Syria, in a sense that the war happens, especially civil war happens when the diplomacy fails, and as you said, the big countries are fighting proxy wars, and they do so by rallying up people, different groups of people, which in many cases fight each other for trivial reasons, and it would seem that it would be impossible to do so if the education level was sufficiently high. And in a broader sense, when you look at it, would you agree that, again, the crisis is associated with many other goals, sustainable development goals, like the goal number 1, the poverty issue, or goal number 10, the equality issue? And when you look further, it would seem that achieving the sustainable development goals in a way would also contribute greatly to world peace in general. Thank you.
Terrific questions. Keep asking. Don't be shy.
How do you reconcile the concept of, I guess the way I think of sustainability is more of a cyclical concept, and how would you reconcile that with the linear progression of economic growth?
In your book of Price of Civilization, you mentioned that you believe in the millennials to overcome the environmental issues in the coming years. Looking back now, in 5 years, how long do the millennials, perform this?
Hello. I'd like to also ask something about economics to you. And what do you think about the complementary currencies? And do you think that they're going to change the future of finance and the money system? And are they necessary, in your opinion, for sustainability? And also, I'd like to... for example. And also the other social complementary currencies, like especially very popular in Europe right now. And also, may I have your opinions about the importance of the private sector and business for achieving the sustainable development goals? And where do you see the governments in that picture? I mean, they should be like advisor or... Thank you.
Hello. I want to ask you that what kind of solutions do you create to encourage the governments to improve their policies about environmental issues or sometimes technical issues? I'm asking this because in Turkey we have really problems about encouraging the government to improve their policies and improve the legislations and the technical background, etc. Thank you.
Dear Professor, back in 1980, the United States and Russia was faced to each other in Afghanistan, and that caused September 11. That's what I believe. And now we see them again in Syria. Do you afraid it's going to happen something else? Same reason? And also, I took the online your course, The Age of Sustainable Development course. It was a great course. I'm just wondering how is it going right now, and what is your expectation from that courses? And also, last question is, I'm following you last 3 years, and you have a really hard work. And what is your motivation? Thank you.
Professor Sachs, first of all, thank you for coming to Turkey. I would like to ask, before the 17 sustainable goals, we had Millennium Goals, and you worked for that goals quite much. What was the success of Millennium Goals? Right now they became 17, and what is your expectation from the 17 goals? What will be the end result of at the end of 2020?
Okay. Yeah, please.
I do have a question. Do you think the G20 in Antalya is able to enforce for the education in all the countries these standards?
To enforce
These goals for all the in education. Thank you.
Not too many, but maybe a couple. Encourage Twitter is always a good idea.
Just keep after the execution. How would you like for this?
Will we see the end of poverty in our lifetime? One of them. And the other one, what do you think about Bitcoin? And the last one, intergenerational dialogues and transfers of knowledge are critical to SDGs achievements. How do you see it?
That's right, the last one.
Intergenerational dialogues and transfers of knowledge are critical to SDG achievements. How do you see it?
Thanks. Okay. I think the starting point I would say is that I believe that it's possible to set a goal and to achieve it. And it's even possible to achieve these big goals. I don't know whether they'll be achieved or not. So this isn't making a bet. It's saying that it can be achieved. In fact, if you ask me to give a speech, name all the reasons why these goals won't be achieved, I could give a good, long, convincing speech. If you ask me to give a speech, name the reasons why they could be achieved, I also hope I could give a good, convincing speech. I don't know whether they'll be achieved or not, but I think it's possible, and I think it's worth trying. And what I also believe is that if we try, we can get there. So the hardest part, in my opinion, is to take goals like this seriously and get governments to work on them, get all of us organized to work on them, because it's easier to state goals like this than to achieve them. So the problem is not, in my opinion, the technical or the economic or the financial or the technological issues. Those are all real. They're not small. But I don't think they're the biggest problems in the world that we face. I think the biggest problems in the world that we face is that we're not well organized to solve problems like this. To solve problems like this requires new thinking. It requires collaboration. It requires governments acting on behalf of the common good rather than on behalf of the politician or on behalf of a specific part of the society at the expense of another part of society. It requires international trust. It requires not having wars that keep deflecting us. It requires understanding that the person you're facing in a different country is not your enemy, although each one may think that, but is actually just another human being trying to find this same place in the world to have some basic respect and needs met. So, to my mind, that's the biggest challenge that we have. I know that many of the things that I've worked on, like the Millennium Development Goals, could have been solved even much faster and much farther than was done had we tried harder. And often I had the experience that I saw, oh, look, it's working. And when you then go to the government, they don't care. Or we don't have money for that. Of course you have money for that. Spend less on the military, or raise taxes on rich people, or do something else. Of course there's money for that. Oh, no, we can't do any of that. So we are in a kind of competition for the world's resources. We don't need to win all that much in order to accomplish this, but we do need to get a piece of the action, maybe a couple percentage points more of the output of our societies going in this direction, maybe a couple percentage points not going in some stupid directions. So shifts of resources, and that means whether it's through our private actions, whether it's through our behavior, whether it's through our tax system, whether it's through our philanthropy, we do have to invest more in these areas to accomplish something. I was the advisor for the Millennium Development Goals for the UN for the last 15 years. And a lot of what I recommended all the time is, let's try to do so-and-so. And where did that idea come from? Usually some really smart group of people told me that's the thing to do. And I try to listen to expertise in particular areas. Of course, I always try to be thinking myself critically, does it make sense what they're saying? Is it appropriate? Is that the best evidence? But once you have the idea that something can be done, then you have the problem of how to actually get it done. And my favorite examples of this in my own work were about the MDGs for health. We had 8 MDGs. You don't have to remember them because you need to remember the 17. But we had 8 MDGs for health, and MDG 4 was for child survival, MDG 5 was for mother survival, and MDG 6 was to stop epidemic diseases like AIDS and malaria. So I studied hard about public health 15 years ago, and I'm married to a doctor, so that's a big help also. And I am at a university, which is always wonderful because you have colleagues who know something in areas that you don't know, so you have to listen to colleagues in other departments, and they can brief you and give you answers. And the AIDS doctors and the malaria doctors told me 15 years ago, yes, we can solve these diseases the following way. And a lot of what I did was to try to help put into action the recommendations that they gave. And to do that required raising some money, because most of what is needed in this world requires some resources for it. Of course, some things that is needed is for people to stop wasting resources on stupid things, like wars, top of my list of stupid things. But for other things, we need more resources. Now, there's a big world economy that produces a lot of things. Most of it goes to consumption uses of some sort, and a lot of it goes to very rich people. So I always believe that if rich people took a little bit less and we used the difference for some of these things, we'd go a long way. So at the start of the Millennium Development Goals, one really big thing happened, and that was Bill Gates got involved. So it's good to have the world's richest person on your side. And he gave $30 billion of his own money. He and his wife, Melinda, gave $30 billion into a fund, and that has made a big difference. Big difference in reducing disease and reducing deaths. And early in the period, I made a recommendation that we create another fund called the Global Fund to Fight AIDS, TB, and Malaria. And Secretary General Kofi Annan took that idea and led to make it happen, making a wonderful job. And the fund came about. And Bill Gates put $750 million of his own money to start the fund. And then other governments, not other governments, governments put in money, often less than Bill Gates personally. And then that money was used to pay for things like the bed nets that people use, especially in poor countries, to sleep under to protect them from the mosquitoes that spread malaria. And this has worked in the end. Malaria has been controlled, not completely, but it's way down from what it used to be. And the medicines are better, and the diagnostic tests are better, and many good things have happened. But it took the idea that we must control malaria, and we must spend more money to do that. Not a huge amount of money. To fight malaria effectively costs about $5 billion a year, which is not a lot of money for the world economy. There are 1 billion people in the high-income countries, and so it's just $5 per person. Or I know 5 people in the United States that make $1 billion each year. They don't need that money. Some of them are crooks too. So that isn't also enough to control malaria. So my point is that these issues are solvable, but they're not simple. And unlike other issues where if you have a great product, like the iPhone, that's a great product. Everybody likes their iPhone or their Galaxy or their other smartphone or whatever it is. Then you'll do it just on a market basis. But the problem with these goals is that the pure private economy, profit-making motive is usually not enough, because that won't solve problems for very poor people. It won't solve problems for the environment. It won't establish justice in the world. And so, But it shows how much can be accomplished and how much the resources are. So we can't always use the profit motive, which makes people work really hard, by the way. All over the world, people are ready to work for money. But we have to use other motives. And the most important motive is, this is good for us. We should do this because the world will be better, it will be safer, it will be more pleasant, it will be less violent, it will be less dangerous. So these are good things to do. But then people have to be convinced. And so all of this is to say that when you ask, can the problems be solved? Yes. Will they be solved? Maybe. What's the most important thing needed? Cooperation. To say this is really important. And then innovation, creativity, good solutions, technical knowledge. Because goodwill is vital, but it's not enough. If you don't also have a good answer, your approach won't work. So you need a good app, and you need to be able to mobilize the resources. Somebody asked about whether climate change can be controlled. Well, yes, the answer is, like all of these other goals, you need a specific strategy. For climate change, the single most important strategy is to change our energy system from one that uses coal, oil, and gas to produce our energy to one that uses solar, wind, hydro, geothermal, nuclear, or carbon capture and sequestration technology. So we need a big technological overhaul. Instead of driving cars with internal combustion engines using gasoline, or diesel, we need to drive electric vehicles that are charged by wind or solar power. So we could see what's the direction that we need to change. But to get there is not simple. First, all governments have to agree, or almost all, because otherwise, if some don't, others will say, oh, they're getting ahead of us. That's an advantage. We can't agree if they won't agree. So first you need a consensus so that everybody thinks that it's fair to participate in this. Then you need good technology. We have some of it, but some of it we still need to research and to develop. Then you need to accept short-term costs for longer-term benefits. In other words, we have to be a little bit patient. The reason we want to do this is because if we don't, it's going to be absolutely miserable 30 years from now. But the politician may not care. 30 years from now, what difference? So we have to tell them, we promise we will ruin your reputation forever unless you get on this path. And if you do, you'll be a hero. And you promise to do it. It's goal number 13. And here's how to do it. So all of that is big change. It doesn't come one year to the next. What's the strategy? What's Turkey's best strategy for decarbonization? I don't know. I hope you know. If you don't know, I'd say figure it out. And what better place to start than at a university to study the problem carefully, in detail, scrutinized by experts, and then say, we've got a plan. Do you know how much solar power we could bring in this country, how much wind power? Do you know how much hydropower we could safely use, and so on and so on and so on, to make a plan. Governments are not so good at making these plans. They don't see it as their job, usually. Their job is to win power and to stay in power. That's the job they understand. But if you show them this is a plan that's important for the country, it can make a big difference. If you tell them, next year you have to go back to the UN and everyone's going to ask, what have you done about the SDGs in between? That's a good provocation. Will governments be interested in this? I don't know. It's not simple. In Turkey, there's a lot of politics right now about a lot of different things. And this may not loom high enough on the list. And in the United States, if I tried to give this in the Senate, they would throw me out on the street because our Senate is very corrupted, because it's basically taking money from the oil industry. They think the American people don't care, they're wrong, but the politicians are disconnected from what the public really needs. So it's not easy to do this. I don't view this as a protest movement so much as very serious advocacy, saying, here are answers, here's the promises, here are the goals, we need to get on with this is important. That's the kind of thing that I think is very important, and to show that there are real solutions to each of these. So my strategy with any of them is to ask the question, what to do? What do we know? What don't we know? What needs to be studied? What could change? How much does it cost? Who's going to pay for it? And I try to think about this in a very specific way, not a big theoretical abstraction, but something quite practical. If you look to youth unemployment, for example, that's SDG 8, is decent jobs for all. Like many other of the goals, it's complicated. There's no simple answer to high unemployment of young people. But we know 2 or 3 things about it specifically. First, we know that young people that don't have good skills have a very hard time. And the skills you need keep changing. If you're a computer programmer, someone's going to hire you. That's absolutely the case, because those are things that are needed by any business right now. So that's a very practical kind of thing. Do young people get the skills that they need? If you're an expert in sustainable development, you'll also get a job, because this is going to be what people are worrying about for the next generation. But for youth unemployment, young people that drop out of school or have been in a school where they're not learning practical skills, or they finish high school and they can't read, this is a very common phenomenon. And then you have a serious problem. And for girls, it's really a big phenomenon. All over the Middle East and North Africa, and in many, many other places as well. So the first is decent skills, and the right kind that make a 21st century economy. A second is systems that help link young people to real jobs. So the place in the world that does this best is Germany, because Germany's created over a century apprenticeship programs, training programs, special ways to go from school to work. And the German approach is very practical also. They are more interested in students getting a useful vocational degree than they are in a useless degree, say higher education, but without skills that actually lead somewhere. And so they're very practical in the education sphere, that we need electricians, we need this, we need designers, we need programmers, and so on, and we'll help you as an intern, an apprentice in a company to get some training. So we should all learn from the German program. How is it done? What should be done? How could we implement this? Of course, the third issue is that if the schooling is good and the apprenticeship is good, but the economy as a whole doesn't work because it's terribly mismanaged by the government, because the country's at war, say, like Libya or Syria, also it's going to be the same kind of problem, but for a different reason. And that's a very serious problem as well. So every case like this needs a diagnosis. And the question of high youth unemployment in Egypt could be quite different from Libya, could be quite different from Jordan, it could be quite different from Turkey or Italy or Greece. Sometimes it's the banks aren't working, sometimes it's the government isn't working, sometimes it's the schools aren't working. Usually in a complicated problem, it's a little bit of everything, unfortunately. And so you need to find a systemic approach that addresses this. Doing that is hard, and that's why you have to start wanting to solve the problem, because if you don't want to solve the problem, you won't do any hard thing. That's for sure. And so you have to start with the goal, then with really wanting to solve it, then with a good diagnosis that is at least as complicated as the problem is. Einstein famously said, your solution should be as complicated as necessary, but no more. So you don't want to make it overly complicated, but you don't want to make it overly simple. And so that's another part. And so there is no easy answer to that question. But there are pieces that you could diagnose. And I think one could make a big difference on that. You know, I did emphasize a lot that I believe that worrying about these problems is right, because if we don't worry about them, we're going to end up with more disasters. Whether it's climate disaster, food disaster, sea level rise, or more wars. And I really believe that the best way to stop the wars, there are two big ways to stop the wars. One is to stop the hatred. This is very important. I think that's a lot of education also, because people are really trained to hate each other by our cultures, by our societies, by ignorance, basically. And if you can also meet other people, this is a phenomenal way not to want to kill them. I think that youth engagement across cultures is so important, actually. And the opportunity to meet people from other countries and understand, oh, what are we doing? This is crazy. Is extremely important. But the other way to do this is really to fight the ignorance, the illiteracy, the poverty, the climate disasters, the high unemployment rates, because all of these are factors that cause some places to be more vulnerable to violence than not. But also, I'll say one other thing about all these wars. We need geopolitical cooperation more than we have. And, you know, in this region, there's so many countries that hate each other. Deep distrust. And this is very dangerous. And the United States has a very bad tendency also to invade other countries, bomb other countries, that it doesn't even have any idea about. It's a terrible habit of powerful countries. They're very arrogant and very stupid at the same time. And so that's why I really, really believe in the United Nations as the best hope for this. I really like the UN. I spend a lot of time there. And what I like is that at least inside the UN, everybody has to talk to each other, even if they think that they hate each other. That's the job of diplomats, is to be able to talk to everybody. It's a good training, by the way. It's really interesting to watch because the diplomats they're enormously pleasant. They can talk to anybody. They don't necessarily tell the truth, but it's really important to learn that but what I want to do on many of these crises is to put the responsibility back to the United Nations rather than just Turkey trying to solve the Syria crisis, or Russia saying, we're going to go do this, or Iran saying, we're going to do this, or Saudi Arabia saying, we're going to go bomb Yemen. We're never going to get out of this mess if each country is just acting on its own and saying, we've got our own solution. It's guaranteed to leave a bigger and bigger mess. And so finding a diplomatic process, in my view, is really, really essential. I didn't cover every one of the questions, but I hope that I gave you enough of a flavor that you felt that there was some part answer to your question.
Thank you so much, Jeff, for your patience and for all the sincere information you have given. Actually, I would like to add something. Some years ago, Ban Ki-moon was here, and again we had plenty of questions, and again the questions were in this direction. So I immediately remembered, some years ago, the same concept, questions, students. So it's so nice that our students are having this proactive approach, and we are so happy and lucky that we are having you to answer these questions. Thank you so much. So, I think the questions are all okay, and we can close the session. Thank you so much.
Good, thanks a lot.
Canım ne yapıyorsun? Ay bir dakika. Aşağı yerim kız, aşağıda öpüşürüz. Bir tane.